Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmates. The Commonwealth Period. On November 15, 1935, the Filipino people took the pre-ultimate step to independence with the inauguration of the Commonwealth of the Philippines. Only 2 months prior, on September 16, a million Filipinos has dropped to the polls to elect their two highest officials, the President and the Vice President. This was the first time in the history of the nation that a Filipino could finally sit as chief executive and hold an office in Malacanang Palace. Senate President Manuel L. Quezon and his running mate, Senate President pro tempore Sergio Osmeña, were elected as President and Vice President, while voters elected representative for the new unicameral National Assembly and for the local oppositions. The Commonwealth was the culmination of efforts to secure a definite timetable for the withdrawal of American sovereignty over the Philippines. Early on, at the start of the American occupation, the United States has established local governments with the local elected town and provincial officials. Afterwards came a gradual expansion of the national legislative representation, beginning with the Philippine Assembly or the lower house in 1907. It was until the Jones Law of 1916 that was a pledge of eventual independence once Filipinos were ready for self-governance was made. The Jones Law led to the creation of an all-Filipino legislature composed of the Philippine Senate and the House of Representatives. However, the position of Chief Executive of the Governor-General and was considered instruction precursor to the Department of Education were reserved for the American official appointed by the President of the United States. Half of the Philippine Supreme Court was reserved for the American as well. Independence missions from 1919 onwards were periodically sent to the U.S. Congress and the White House of lobby for the negotiated independence. In 1931, the Oxrock mission with the stands of Osmeña and Rojas successfully lobbied for the enacted of the Hari-Habes Cutting Act, which was passed over the President Herbert Hoover's veto in 1932. This was, however, rejected by the Philippine legislature. In 1934, a new mission of Qua-Aqual mission made up of Quezon, Benigno, Aquino Sr., and Rafael Alunnan negotiated the Tradings McDuffie or the Philippine Independence Act, which set a 10-year transition period to be known as the Commonwealth of the Philippines, followed by the recognition of independence of the Philippines by the United States. The Tradings McDuffie Act established the parameters of the preparator period. Some powers of the supervision were reserved to the United States as well as the foreign diplomacy and currency. In all other respects, the Philippines became the self-governing. Among the provisions was the election of 1934 for the Constitutional Conventional draft to the Constitution of the incoming Commonwealth governments. It was presided over by the Claro M. Recto with 202 elected Filipino delegates who decided that the constitution to be written could cover not only the transitional Commonwealth but could apply to the Republic as well. The Conventional finished its works on February 8, 1935, and submitted it to the President of the United States for certification that it was provision compiled with the Philippine Independence Act. It was certified on March 25, 1935, and it was subsequently ratified by the Filipino people in the President. Aside from the certification by the President of the United States of the draft Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Philippines, the United States government also reserves certain powers. Currency, coinage, imports, exports, and immigration law could require the approval of the President of the United States. The United States could also intervene in the processes of the Commonwealth of the Philippines via proclamation by the President of the United States. All decisions of the courts of the Philippines were also subjected to review by the Supreme Court of the United States. However, these powers were exercised rarely. The Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Philippines provided with the presidential system of government with the unicameral legislature. It had the power to enact laws for the Philippines known as the Commonwealth Acts through the National Assembly. The Commonwealth was meant to lay down the foundation for the independent, fully functional state. Its priorities could be seen in the first laws enacted by the new National Assembly. Commonwealth Act No. 1 established the Philippine Army and the National Defense Policy. Commonwealth Act No. 2 established the National Economic Council. Commonwealth Act No. 3 created the Court of Appeals. In 1935, Constitution was amended in 1940 to permit the re-election of the President and the Vice President, to restore the Senate and to shift the legislature back to the bicameral system, and to establish a national electoral authority to commission on elections. The proposed amendments were ratified in the plebiscite held on June 18, 1940. With war looming over the world following German aggression in Europe and the Japanese annexation in Manchuria, the National Assembly confers emergency power on the government. The Philippine Army was placed under the command of the United States Armed Forces Far East, or USAFFE, headed by Field Marshal Douglas MacArthur, who was recalled to active service after having served as military advisor to the Commonwealth since 1935. Filipinos re-elected Quezon, Osmeña, and Registrator to fill seats in the newly created bicameral Congress on November 11, 1941. War in Asia broke out on December 8, 1941. Following the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, the American naval port rests in Hawaii, and Axis military advances throughout Southeast Asia. USAFFE, composed of Filipino and American personnel, held of the Japanese war machine that had routed the French, British, and Dutch colonial government in the region. But lack of reinforcement, disease, and obsolete armaments due to the Europe First policy adoption by the U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt hampered any real progress. On December 24, 1941, President Quezon in his war cabinet evacuated to the island Strongford of Corregidor in Manila Bay, and 2 months later left for Australia, en route to the safety of the United States. There, the Commonwealth government continued the function of exile, gaining recognition from the world community as a member of the United Nations. President Quezon continued to represent the Commonwealth of the Philippines in Washington, D.C. He could serve in the same capacity with the extended term in 1943 with the virtue of Joint Resolution No. 25 of the United States Congress until his death on August 1, 1944, resulting in Osmeña's accession to the presidency. Osmeña gave his inaugural address in Washington, D.C., making him the only Philippine president thus far to deliver an inaugural address outside the Philippines. On October 20, 1944, Allied forces under the command of Field Marshal Douglas MacArthur landed on the shore of Leyte and began the campaign to liberate the Philippines. He was accompanied by President Osmeña, who returns formally re-established the Commonwealth government of the Philippine soil. With the nullification of acts of the Second Republic, President Osmeña reconvened the Congress elected in November 11, 1941, on June 9, 1945. On April 23, 1946, the first post-war election held, which is Manuel Rojas and Elpidio Corino were elected president and vice president over re-electionist Osmeña and his running mate Eulogio Rodriguez Sr. Rojas took his oath of office on May 28, 1946, and as the third and last president of the Commonwealth of the Philippines, in front of the reins of the Legislative Building in Manila. The succeeding weeks were set to the provision of the Philippine Independence Act. The Commonwealth of the Philippines began the Republic of the Philippines, the Third Republic. Thus, on July 4, 1946, Rojas could begin take his oath as president. At this time, as a president of the newly inaugurated Independent Republic of the Philippines, the Congress of the Commonwealth, then they began the First Congress of the Republic, and the international recognition was finally achieved as governments entered into treaties with the new republic. Many of today's institutions in our government trace their origin to the Commonwealth. This includes Executive Office 1935, Court of Appeals 1935, Philippine Charity Swept Takers Office, Commission ng Wikang Pilipino 1936, National Bureau of Investigation 1936, Department of Budget and Management 1936, Government Service Insurance System 1936, Department of National Defense 1939, Department of Health 1940, New Bilibid Prison in 1940, President Communication Operation Office from the Department of Information and Public Relations 1943, Boy Scout of the Philippines, Girl Scout of the Philippines, National Food Authority, National Economic Development Authority, originally National Economic Council in 1936, Bureau of Immigration and Deportation, ROTC System, Bureau of Aeronautics 1936, now the Civic Aviation Authority of the Philippines, Philippine Military Academy, Philippine Air Force, Articles of War AFP, COMELEC, Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Chartered Cities, Cebu City, 1937, Bacolod, 1938, Quezon City, 1939, Davao City, 1936, Cavite City, 1940, Iloilo City, 1937, San Pablo City, Laguna, 1940, Zamboanga City, 1936. Policies: All Filipino Supreme Court 1935, State of the Nation Address 1935, Minimum Daily Wage 1936, National Language 1939. So class, I will give you a short quiz about what I have discussed about the Commonwealth period. Identification 2 points each and essay 5 points each, with a total of 20 points. Please bring out your ball pen and your paper to answer these questions. Thank you so much.